Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Cliff Morgan, Program Director for the 50K Coalition, and I am welcoming you all to our July bi-monthly webinar. Today, we've got a pretty jam-packed agenda focusing on the data collection component for the 50K Coalition, which is one of the most important things of the work that we're doing in collecting the data and information from all the programs and the hard work that you and your colleagues are doing out in the field. Gabe, my colleague, I should say, Gabriel Nahara, is heavy on the agenda today, and he will be walking us through quite a bit of information. So, just as a highlight or high level of the agenda for today, after this welcome, we'll be walking through a mission moment. We'll be walking through the 50K's data collection process, and we'll be talking about that at three different levels, from a national data level, an institutional data level, and then programmatic data level. And then we'll move into the programmatic data collection process and how we'll be going about doing that. And then give an overview of Clear Impact, which is the tool that we use to combine and gather all the data from all the programs across the country. So after that, there'll be a Q&A and next steps in the data collection process, and we will continue to move through from there. So without further ado, I will turn it over to my colleague Gabe for the rest of the agenda today. So thank you, and Gabe, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Cliff. For those of you I have not had the pleasure of meeting either virtually or in person, my name is Gabriel Nahera, and I am the Community Engagement Manager and Strategy Consultant for the 50K Coalition. The mission moment is a standing agenda item and is meant to focus and highlight the fine work of one or more of our 50K Coalition member organizations. Today, however, in lieu of the mission moment, I would like to take the time to reflect on the passing of a dear friend and colleague, Mr. Rodrigo Rod Garcia. Rod passed away Saturday, July 2nd, 2022, surrounded by family and friends. Rod changed the face of our nation, Miguel Alemany, SHIP's current board chair, stated. He created what has become the largest STEM organization for Hispanics, impacting thousands of lives every year. He was a visionary giant, and as such, we should remember him with admiration and love. Rod and 6 other Latino engineers started SHIP in his garage in Los Angeles in 1973. It was obvious to these 7 Latino engineers that the Hispanic community had much to contribute to STEM fields. It just needed guidance on breaking into the mainly white male-dominated industry. A national organization dedicated to bridging the gap between Hispanics and STEM would do just that. The SHIP of today and tomorrow is only possible because of the work Rod and his 6 fellow Latino engineers started almost 50 years ago. I was blessed to call Rod a good friend and colleague. Please join me in a moment of silence to reflect on Rod's transition. Rest in peace, good friend. As Cliff mentioned, the main topic of today's webinar is the discussion of the 50K Coalition's data collection process. So in the time that I have remaining with you, the agenda topics I'll be covering is first answering the question, what is the 50K Coalition? And then also to provide some context as to why we're engaging in a data collection process. What I'd like to do is go over the 50K Coalition's 4 organizing frameworks, which are collective impact, results-based accountability, turn the curve thinking, and clear impact. I'll then discuss the data collection process itself, and then open it up for Q&A and discuss next steps. So with that in mind, let's get started. What is the 50K Coalition? I thought it'd be a good idea to share a 2-minute video that was part of a national forum that the 50K Coalition conducted in 2021. It's a short presentation by Carl Reed, who's the former executive director of NSBE and is currently the chief inclusion officer at Northeastern University. Carl, along with Karen Hording, the executive director of SWE, Sarah Echohawk, the CEO of ACES, and Barry Cordero, at that time, the executive director of SHIP, organized the 50K Coalition. So let's hear from Carl, where he discusses the genesis and the idea behind the 50K Coalition.
In the fall of 2014, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers held an annual conference, and I was asked to speak. And just after my appointment as executive director of NSBE, the Society of Women Engineers, NSBE, SHIP, and later ACES were challenged by executives at Boeing at that conference and other common partners to work collaboratively to address the underrepresentation of Black, Indigenous, and people of color or BIPOC and women engineers. They shared our frustration that we've been talking about the challenges of broadening participation in engineering for over 30 years when I was national chair of NSBE in the 80s. And the timing of this particular challenge was serendipitous, though. All four of the CEOs were relatively new in our roles and had no egos to speak of. And earlier, I had read the 2011 collective impact paper by John Kania and Mark Kramer in the Stanford Innovation Review about a methodology to solve complex social problems with public-private partnerships using this collective impact approach. And I thought that this would be an optimal approach for collaboration to meet the challenge set forth by our partners. In January 2015, as I mentioned, we gathered at SWE headquarters to brainstorm. NSBE was in the midst of completing its 10-year strategic plan to nearly triple the number of Black engineers the nation's colleges and universities produce, from about 3,500 to 10,000. And so we came together and asked each of the organizations, what could your stretch goal be by 2025 on an annual basis? And when we added up the numbers, it came to about 50,000. And thus the 50K Coalition was born. We've received funding from the United Engineering Foundation and the National Science Foundation as part of its NSF Includes project. And we defined common agenda and shared measurement metrics. One of the best hires we brought on was Gabe Nahira, who you heard from moments ago, who facilitated this work, helped us to think about collective impact in a broader way. And as a result, the network grew 50% from 40 to 60 institutions. We hosted 3 national convenings during which we developed action network groups and began crafting the scalable strategies to operationalize the common agenda.
Thanks, Carl, for sharing the genesis and idea behind the 50K Coalition. And thank you also very much for your kind words. They are greatly appreciated. Thank you. So what is the 50K Coalition? Building upon what Carl said, the 50K is a collaboration of over 60 diverse organizations that currently includes 4-year engineering colleges, community colleges, professional engineering societies, and nonprofit organizations committed to advancing equity in engineering by learning together, aligning, and integrating actions to achieve population and systems level change. It is a collaboration that uses collective impact to inform decision-making and improve our 50K member programs. It is also a collaboration that relies exclusively on the collective action driven by coalition members. And this is a key point in that the real work of the 50K Coalition does not happen, with Cliff and I, although we do our share of work. Where the rubber meets the road is at our 50K member organization. So this is a key point. And it is also a collaboration that is taking a systems approach to affect social change. So now that we know what the 50K Coalition is all about, let's review our 4 organizing frameworks by first looking at collective impact. Now, collective impact has 5 conditions that support an intentional way of working together and sharing information to solve complex problems. Proponents of collective impact, of which, the 50K is one, believe that a collective impact approach is more likely to solve complex problems than if a single organization were to approach the same problem independently. So let's talk about the 50K's collective impact framework. The 50K's collective impact framework starts with a common agenda. This means coming together to collectively define the problem and create a shared vision to solve it. The second condition of collective impact establishes shared measurement. This means tracking progress in the same way across all our coalition network, allowing for continuous learning and accountability. The third condition fosters mutually reinforcing activities. That means integrating our members' many different activities to maximize results. The fourth condition encourages continuous communication. That means building trust and strengthening relationships through activities such as this webinar, our website, and other convenings that are organized by the 50K Coalition. The fifth condition calls for establishing a solid backbone. That means having a team dedicated to aligning and coordinating the fine work of the 50K Coalition. And that work, as I mentioned earlier, happens at your respective organization. I recommend you read the article Carl referred to in his brief presentation. It's on collective impact, and it was written by Kanye and Kramer, and it appeared in the winter 2011 edition of the Stanford Social Innovation Review. Let me briefly review the first 3 conditions of collective impact: common agenda, shared measurement, and mutually reinforcing activities. Too often in engineering advocacy, the work of creating pathways to engineering careers for BIPOC and women engineering students is usually done in disconnected silos, resulting in isolated impact. Now, we know many high-quality programs are run by well-meaning organizations committed to increasing engineering diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these programs have been responsible for tremendous progress over the last 50 years. But somehow, they all don't add up to a highly efficient system. The result is that thousands of potential BIPOC and women engineering students are left behind and fall through the cracks. For example, over the last 10 years, the percentage of Blacks receiving engineering degrees has hovered somewhere around 4%. Progress for Hispanics has been positive, but equally disappointing. While doing more of the same may be warranted, a new collaborative approach may accelerate progress and benefit existing programs in the long term. And, in order to achieve the goal of graduating 50,000 diverse engineering graduates annually by 2025, the 50K Coalition works to eliminate these disconnected silos by embracing a joint approach through agreed upon actions. These actions are what we call our common agenda. And our first common agenda item is undergraduate student support and retention. This common agenda item focuses on increasing our coalition member college and universities' ability to recruit, enroll, retain, and graduate more women and underrepresented students. The next item is community college linkages. This common agenda item focuses on building intentional linkages between community colleges and colleges of engineering as a critical component of the engineering graduate pipeline. Let's talk about shared measurement. Developing a shared measurement system is essential to collective impact. Agreement on a common agenda is inconsequential without an agreement as to how success will be measured and reported. Collecting data and measuring results consistently on a short list of metrics across all 50K Coalition member organizations is critical to the 50K's success. Shared measurement ensures that all of our collective efforts remain aligned and enable the 50K Coalition members to hold each other accountable and learn from each other's successes and failures. The 50K Coalition tracks these metrics that are shown on this slide as indicators of our progress towards the goal to produce 50,000 diverse engineers annually by 2025. And the shared measurement metrics that we're measuring across the 50K Coalition are the number of bachelor's degrees awarded annually in engineering to U.S. citizens and permanent residents, disaggregated by gender, race, and ethnicity. Also, we're tracking the annual number of two-year college students who transfer to four-year engineering colleges. And third, we're measuring the percentage of freshman engineering majors who return their sophomore year disaggregated by gender, race, and ethnicity. A key to the 50K Coalition's collective impact effectiveness is our ability and efficiency in creating synergy and aligning coalition resources around what works in delivering similar services at various points along the education pathway, all tailored to the evolving needs and environment of the BIPOC and woman engineering student. 50K Coalition members are encouraged to explore new and existing mutually reinforcing activities, including programs, courses, seminars, webinars, workshops, promotional campaigns, policy initiatives, institutional capacity building efforts, and other activities prove to work. Our mutually reinforcing activity strategies include what is shown here on this slide, and that we have organized and convened action network groups around each common agenda item. And these action network groups brainstorm prototypes and models of new or scaled activities that address barriers to the completion of engineering programs by BIPOC and women engineering students. We also distribute activities of the action network groups to all coalition members to take advantage of existing skills, passion, and expertise. And I might add that the action network groups meet bi-monthly. So if you're interested in learning more about our action network groups, please reach out to Cliff or myself to learn more on how to join and participate in one of our action network groups. Let's now look at the results-based accountability framework, also known as RBA. The RBA framework is a disciplined way of thinking and acting used by many nonprofits, academic institutions, and government agencies to improve the lives of children, families, students, and the community. The 50K Coalition encourages our members to use RBA to identify and develop innovative strategies to enhance the performance of their programs. And we'll discuss how this is done later in this presentation. Oh, and before I move on, I forgot to mention that if you have any questions of what I've presented or what I'm about to present, please put your questions in the chat box, and Cliff and I will address them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Much of the following material that I'll be presenting is adapted from the book Trying Hard is Not Good Enough by Mark Friedman. I encourage you to pick up a copy at your earliest convenience to learn more about practical methods on how to use RBA at your respective organizations. So let me move on. Now, the population versus program performance accountability distinction is a unique feature of RBA, and it is what separates it from all other results-oriented frameworks that are out there. It is essential to understand this distinction because it determines the roles and responsibilities of the 50K Coalition members. What do we mean by population accountability? It's the well-being of whole populations in a geographic area. So, for example, when we speak about whole populations, we may speak about community college students in California, all BIPOC and women engineering undergraduates in the United States. In other words, whole populations in a geographic area. And we use population accountability to organize the work of the 50K Action Network groups. Now, in contrast, program performance accountability coordinates and organizes the collective impact of our 50K members' programmatic work. So why does this matter in collective impact? This matters because well-being conditions may or may not be influenced by existing 50K member programs or services. And suppose these programs or services positively impact whole populations. In that case, the providers of services and programs may not have an effective way to talk about their impact on population accountability. And this is where RBA comes in. The RBA framework gives us a way to do it. Let me share some concepts and language to illustrate and capture these distinctions. When we talk about population accountability, the first concept is a condition of well-being for children, adults, families, and communities. In RBA, we use the term result or population result. What are some examples? Children born healthy, safe communities, and in the case of the 50K Coalition, 50,000 BIPOC and women engineering graduates. These are all results, population results. When we talk about a measure that helps quantify the achievement of a population result, we call that an indicator. Examples of indicators are the rate of low birth weight babies, crime rate, and in the case of the 50K Coalition, the percent undergraduate freshman retention rate. Now, when we talk about performance accountability, we are not talking about whole communities here. We're talking about governments, agencies, service systems, and programs right down to the smallest unit. For my example, I'm using the DuPage Department of Health, the city of Flint, Michigan, and in the case of the 50K, the University of Maryland. These are all examples of how we frame our work when discussing performance accountability and distinguishing it from population accountability. Now, when we talk about measuring how well a program, government, agency, or service system is doing, we talk about performance measures. As to performance measures, we focus on three types in RBA. One, how much did we do? Two, how well did we do it? And three, is anyone better off? Sometimes people refer to this last measure as a measure of customer results. Now, the symbols on the far right are symbols we use in Clear Impact to talk about our work, from the well-being of whole populations to the performance of the smallest unit. In the case of the 50K, this is the performance, again, of our community college, engineering college, professional engineering societies, and nonprofit and corporate member programs. Now, I'll describe Clear Impact later in this presentation, but for now, allow me to move on to discussing turn the curve thinking, and then I'll tie all these concepts together to see how they form our comprehensive framework. Let's turn our attention now to turn the curve thinking. As you will soon see, turn the curve thinking enables the 50K and its members to move from talking about issues to taking action by asking 5 simple questions. Turn the curve thinking is a disciplined approach to decision making. It's simple, and it's the way people talk to each other, and it makes common sense. So that when individuals want to achieve a result together, they sit down, they have conversations about it in a language that they can understand, a plain language without lots of jargon that makes it complicated and difficult for groups to work together. There's also a minimal amount of paper involved, and it's useful to the group. As a matter of fact, turn the curve thinking enables groups to move from talk to action, so that even after the first meeting, we can have an action plan about how to move forward and improve the data and get the results that we want. Turn the curve thinking as a disciplined approach to decision making starts with the question, how are we doing? looking at a line graph of data over time to understand each period, what has happened with that data. So in this case, as an example, we're using the data that the Community College Linkage Action Network Group is focusing on during their Action Network Group meetings. Once we look at how we are doing, we want to begin thinking about why is the data looking the way that it does? What has happened in that period of time to cause the data to go either up or down? So the groups are conducting a force field analysis. Once we consider why the data is moving up or down, we want to look forward to do a forecast to say, since the data looks this way and we know the story, what's happening behind it, where are we heading with this? What's going to happen if we don't do anything differently? Or if we do things the same, how is the data going to change? Is that okay if the data stays the way it is now? If it's not okay, we want to continue to look at who could help us improve the data and what are some options that we have to work together so that the data is improving. So we may not be able to do everything we want to do, but there is an action plan of things that are feasible and can be accomplished. So those are the next steps. What are we going to do? Once those actions are put into place, we want to go back and look at the data again to see, have those actions been effective? That's what we call turning the curve. If the data has improved, we can say that we have begun to turn the curve. And when we look back at the data again, asking ourselves, when we turned the curve, why did it turn? What was effective? Who might need to help us even more that we could bring to the table? And then, what are we going to do next based upon what we have learned? This is an iterative process, what I call a lather, rinse, repeat process. And when we go back through this process, asking ourselves, how are we doing? Why does the data look the way that it does this time? When we looked at it again, who could help us? What are we going to do? This is what is called turn the curve thinking. And it's this type of thinking that could lead to improving performance, not only of our 50K member programs, but the conditions of well-being for the community that we are focusing on, the BIPOC and women engineering students. We discussed the 5 core questions that frame turn the curve thinking. Now you got the concepts of indicators and performance measures. That's what we plug in at the beginning of the turn the curve process and how we are able to do the work at the population and performance level with turn the curve thinking. This is the comprehensive framework the 50K Coalition is using, which I trust you see is pretty simple. Allow me to throw a few more concepts at you, some that we've already discussed, and then I'll bring it all together. A baseline is a visual display of the history and forecast for an indicator or performance measure. We talked about this already, but now you have some terminology. Earlier I said measure, now you could say, hey Gabe, I get it. A baseline is going to be about an indicator or a performance measure. It's going to be the historical or the forecast baseline. An example here is just an illustration of any curve or trend line over time. The next concept, doing better than the forecasted part of the baseline. We call that turning the curve. This critical concept shows up as a change in the trend. The last concept, which I'll talk about, are action plans. I'm going to use the term strategies here, and by that I mean a coherent set of actions that has a reasonable chance of turning the curve of an indicator or performance measure. An example here is the Community College Linkages Action Network Group National Forum Strategy, which I trust you all are familiar with. And again, we use symbols, and these symbols, you'll find us using them in our Action Network Group, meetings, workbooks, and especially in Clear Impact. Now, let's take all this terminology, put it together, and see how comprehensive results-based accountability is a framework for the important work of the 50K Coalition. Population accountability begins with our results and indicators, which we apply to turn the curve thinking. We then develop strategies. Again, it could be a strategy with multiple actions or strategies. The concept here is a coherent set of actions that has a reasonable chance to turn the curve on the indicator. This is done at the population level and typically involves more than one player, more than one agency, more than one community college, more than one 50K coalition member. Those strategies include multiple stakeholders and players, governments, service systems, organizations, agencies, programs, etc. The indicator gauges the efficacy of those strategies as opposed to the parts of the strategy, i.e., what a government is going to do, what a service system is going to do, what agencies are going to do, etc. Each of those has its own performance measures. And then we apply turn the curve thinking to those performance measures for those separate yet related programs, agencies, etc. And each has its own strategies to turn the curve of its performance measure. The cumulative effect of these combined programs, activities, agencies, etc. together constitute a strategy that we trust will turn the curve of the indicator. As you could see, the 50K Coalition operates on two levels that are related: population level and program performance level. Let's now talk about Clear Impact. What is Clear Impact? Clear Impact is an easy-to-use web-based software that helps program managers, grant managers, and performance directors collaborate with collective impact stakeholders and community partners to simplify data collection, standardize reporting, measure progress, and improve performance on a local, regional, and national scale. The 50K Coalition is using Clear Impact scorecards to move beyond the number of people served and to truly demonstrate that communities served by the 50K Coalition and its members are better off. Let's watch a 2-minute overview video to see Clear Impact in action and see what it can do to highlight the work of the 50K Coalition and our member organizations.
Clear Impact Scorecard is a software tool that enables data-driven decision-making, simplifies data reporting, and improves relationships with funders and the community you're trying to impact. It enables you to easily measure the impact that your work is having on the community as a whole, while also managing the performance of each individual program and service involved, aligning contributions to the impact. Furthermore, it collects qualitative analysis for every metric, enabling users to examine current factors and guide them toward creating strategies for improvement. From there, Clear Impact Scorecard helps ensure that your improvement strategies are executed by organizing them into a series of actions assigned to specific users. All actions for specific project are also automatically added to a Gantt chart. This helps managers ensure strategies are being executed efficiently and a level of personal accountability for each team member. Clear Impact Scorecard can also help you showcase your work to external stakeholders without diving too quickly into data. The included strategy mapping tool provides an easy way to build custom visuals that outline your organization's structure and how each partner or program's contribution helps achieve results. Finally, the purpose of all of our efforts is to positively impact our communities and strengthen our community relationships. Clear Impact Scorecard enables you to embed real-time dashboards in your public website to ensure that all relevant stakeholders can see the impact being created and your organization's contribution to that impact. From sharing your data to telling your story, Clear Impact Scorecard simplifies the way you demonstrate the impact of your hard work.
I trust you found the Clear Impact video informative. In summary, Clear Impact provides the 50K with an easy and effective way to track and communicate the impact of your work toward our 50K goal. Now, before we can build scorecards and communicate our collective impact work, we need the information to go into them, which is the rationale, behind the 50K's data collection, initiative. What I show here is a screenshot of a few of the 87 50K member programs we have collected data on and compiled and listed in Clear Impact. Yeah, these programs are from over 25 coalition members and were last updated in June 2019. Now, a key point here is we know that the programmatic work of our members did not stop in June of 2019. Therefore, it's not a matter of restarting your program work. It's a matter of collecting the information on our members' current programs and updating our Clear Impact scorecards with this information. So by setting the context and rationale out of the way, I will now discuss the 50K's data collection process. The 50K has been collecting data on 3 levels: the national level, institutional level, and programmatic level. The national and institutional data collection process is being led by the Yoder and Yamashita Group, with oversight by the Data Council that is co-shared by Dr. Roberta Rincon, Associate Director of Research at SWE, and Dr. Michael Kahn, Executive Director of the Student Research Center. Data sources include iPads and 50K member community colleges and 4-year engineering colleges. The national data focus is on national graduation rates, total enrollment, disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and gender. The institutional data focuses on collecting more granular data, such as Pell Grant recipients, transfers to 4-year programs, second-year retention, and 4- and 6-year graduation rates. The 50K Data Council is piloting a data collection program and has recruited 3 community colleges and 2 4-year engineering colleges to participate and provide data to the 50K. Outcomes of this pilot program will be shared at our next webinar, which is scheduled for Thursday, September 22nd from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. To fully build out our 50K Clear Impact scorecards, Cliff and I are reaching out to each 50K member organization. We request programmatic data for their programs or one-time initiatives that align with or one or more of the 50K's common agenda items mentioned earlier. Cliff, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, no, I think we will definitely be reaching out actually starting with the week of August 8th, and we would love to try to get all of this completed by the end of November. I think that's kind of the timeline that we talked about, right?
No, okay, yeah. So building upon what Cliff said, our programmatic data collection is a 2-step process. In step 1, we ask for the description of programs or initiatives aligned with the 50K's common agenda and shared measurement metric, anticipated outcomes and goals, planned program activities, and the resources needed to implement the program or initiative. And what you see here on this slide is a template that we will share with our 50K members as a fillable PDF. We emailed back on June 21st a data collection survey using SurveyMonkey, and a link to this survey will be included along with this fillable PDF in an email that Cliff mentioned just a while ago that we'll be sending out the week of August the 8th. Did I read that right, Cliff?
That is correct.
All right. Let me move on to step 2 of the process. In step 2, once we receive your programmatic data, we will schedule a virtual meeting with you and your program team and walk you through converting your data into a program logic model. Basically, a logic model is a systematic and visual way to present and share your understanding of the relationships among the resources you require to operate your program, the activities you plan to do, and the changes or results you hope to achieve. The 50K believes the program logic model approach offers more significant learning opportunities, better documentation of outcomes, and shared knowledge of what works and why. In other words, all this data is going to be used to help us tell the story behind the curve that I mentioned during our Turn the Curve Thinking, presentation earlier. Let me share a work in progress of a program logic model example of one of our 50K coalition member programs. So as you could see, we still need to do a little bit of work here, but you get a sense of the format and the outcomes of the data that we're looking at. So this, along with other national and institutional data that I mentioned earlier that we are collecting, will be added to Clear Impact and made available across the 50K coalition member network. Well, Cliff, that about wraps up what I have to say. But before we move on to Q&A, I want to mention that I am available, and I know you are also, for an in-depth one-on-one training session on any of our organizing frameworks. And to request a session with me and Cliff, please email me at gnahera@50kcoalition.org, and I will respond and provide you with an online scheduling calendar so that you may select a session day and time that's convenient for you. So Cliff, let's open it up for a Q&A. Let me stop this screen share. There we go.
Yep.
And that was a lot of information, but as I mentioned, that's a high level overview. It's a simple process, but I know some of the 50K members hearing and seeing this for the first time may have some additional questions beyond the time we have available here to answer fully. So I really encourage them to schedule sessions with us to provide more in-depth training.
Well, and I want to thank you, Gabe, for going through all of that information. It was quite a bit and very impactful, important to the work that we're doing. So, in sharing that, I do, have a couple questions that have come through. And the first one being, we submitted a program. Can we get access to that data that we submitted, before?
Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is yes. What we could make available is, and what we'll do, and I'm thinking out loud here, Cliff. Mm-hmm. We typically send out a blast email, requesting data. What we'll do is I'll follow up with an email. We'll follow up with an email to each of the organizations that have already submitted programs, mm-hmm. and we'll show them, here's the data that you submitted back in the date. Yep. Can you please update and the information? So yeah, we'll make that available.
Awesome. And then will we have access to Clear Impact? And then what is the cost for our organization to use it?
Okay, well, as I understand, there's a special going on right now, right, Cliff? There's no cost.
Yes, it's free 99, free 99.
Free 99. So, this is the Clear Impact subscription is being covered by the 50K Coalition, with the caveat that we were able to negotiate a very favorable subscription rate, but you will have static access to Clear Impact data. So in other words, you're not going to be able to go in and change the information. We'll input the information for you, but you will have access to all the information that is listed in Clear Impact, along with all the bells and whistles that was shown in that demonstration video on Clear Impact. Okay. But this we could cover in an orientation session, with each of our members.
Yeah, and just for a little context, I think one of the things that was found before was that number one, granting access to manipulate the data and enter data into Clear Impact before, the costs were, exorbitant. So we in negotiating a new rate, what we were able to do again is to get that rate down, but also from what happened before, Gabe had to do, one-on-one work with folks in member organizations to help them get the information in. This way we can kind of keep a gauge on what's going in and help support members as that information is going in. It also helps us to kind of stay on top of what's going on with member organizations, so that we're clear about the data that's being added into Clear Impact.
Okay.
Yeah. And then let's see. Oh, we have a program logic model. Do we still need to do step 1 in that process?
No. And the reason we went through a 2-step process originally when we formed the 50K, a majority of the 50K members did not have program logic models. So what we did is walk them through that first step. Well, let's just get what programs you have that align and support the common agenda and shared measurement metrics. Tell us about, the activities and what you plan to do. We took that information and then we formatted it into a program logic model framework, and then had a one-on-one with them to go through that logic model to get their buy-in and, hey, yeah, that looks right. Yeah, or I want to change this. Okay. So if you already have a program logic model, no, you're way ahead of the curve. So that you could just submit that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Which then brings the question is maybe we should submit a step 2 template.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me think about that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Good. So great question.
Yeah.
And then the last question that I have here is, how often will data be collected? And I can actually kind of take that one, and
Okay.
Gabe, you can fill in. But the data collection will be kind of on an annual schedule. That November timeline that we laid out will likely be the exact schedule or timeline that we'll be collecting data again next year. But I do think, we will be building in some quarterly check-ins and appointments just to make sure that we're staying on track and helping to make sure that we're moving the process forward. And again, it's not to guide your work or tell you how to do your work, but it's in an effort to help stay on track with what's going on. So 50K is able to gather that data and share that information out. And Gabe, does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
And not a question that was asked here, but I know a question that has been brought up, since we re-engaged, we are re-engaging with our 50K coalition members. The work of the 50K coalition did not stop, right? And the reason that it did not stop, because as we mentioned earlier, the work of the 50K is being done at your member organizations.
Yeah.
So these programs that we have, the 87 programs that we listed in Clear Impact, even though they're out of date, the information, some of these programs, or the majority of them, are still ongoing. Okay? The work did not stop. So it's just a matter of, updating that data and, making it available and using the full bell and whistles capability of Clear Impact to communicate the fine work that you, our 50K coalition members, are doing.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So Cliff, that's about it. And the next steps.
Next steps will be on the lookout for the email communication requesting the survey and program information. Be also on the lookout for emails requesting time for Gabe and I to meet with you about your program level data to do the kind of one-on-one check-ins. And the next bi-monthly webinar, again, I think Gabe, you already mentioned September 22nd, 12 to 1 Eastern. And
that's right.
Yep. And then the A&G meetings are scheduled actually for August, and we can send those dates out and those reminders because I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, good. Well, Cliff, that sort of wraps up all I have on this end, the Q&A. And again, we encourage our 50K members to reach out to us.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. So again, we want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us, tune in on the recording for this bi-monthly webinar, and hopefully the information that we shared is helpful to you in setting the frame for our data collection and data collection processes. And we'll be in touch soon. So
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Cliff. Bye.